A village burned. A woman went silent. And a man chose to fight instead of digging graves. But how close can a hunter get to becoming the hunted? If you want to see what true justice looks like, watch until the very end. We're just a few steps away from reaching 1,500 subscribers, and we'd be honored to have you with us. Thank you to every kind soul who's joined us so far. With your support, we share peaceful, heartfelt stories that warm the soul. If you enjoy calm, meaningful stories, don't forget to subscribe. You're part of this family now. Now, make yourself comfortable. It's time for the story. A thin layer of mist was dancing on the horizon of the steppe. The hazy air from the night lay over the ground like a shroud. As the man tossed back his jet-black hair that flowed like a mane, he became a harbinger of an approaching storm, in sync with the weary breaths of his horse. Liam was returning from a solitary hunting trip that had lasted several days. Despite his body being worn down by time lost in simplicity, the only thought he carried in his heart was the smile of the woman he loved. Myra's voice echoed in his memory like a melody. He was looking forward to spending a few quiet nights with her. But that warm dream was pierced by a line of smoke. At first, he thought the black smoke rising in the distance was a storm coming before lightning. But as he got closer, his eyes widened. Thick, dark plumes of smoke, rising right above the village that held every silhouette he knew. He yanked the reins of his horse with no mercy. The sound of hooves echoed over the stony ground. Something inside him had already shattered. He didn't need to see it to know. A disaster had happened, and he wasn't there. When he reached the hills, the world went silent. There were no bird songs, no children laughing. Only the crackling of burning wood and the stench of death. Charred bodies, scattered stalls, collapsed tents. It was all like a scream, but silent. His eyes searched the ground, familiar faces, the eyes of friends, the bodies of elders. None of them moved. Life had stopped there. Liam walked forward, feeling like each step was eternal torment. His eyes caught the marks dragged along the dirt. Footprints, some the size of children's, with drag marks behind them. The bodies were missing. This was more than a massacre. This was a vile hunt. His steps brought him to the old sycamore tree where Mira spent most of her time. A silent prayer, a flicker of denial swelled inside him. But prayer wasn't enough. Myra's body was lying at the base of the tree, entangled with that of a warrior. Her delicate fingers were clenched over her chest, as if trying to shield herself. The white dress she wore was no longer white. All that remained was a story drawn in blood, marked by the single bullet wound in her back. Liam dropped to his knees. He reached out and touched Myra's cold face. Her eyes were closed, but it looked as though she had just smiled. Time slowed down. The world around him dissolved into steam. Mira was all that remained. His tears fell, but he didn't notice. Because what broke inside him was more than tears. A love, a life, a hope was being buried. His body trembled as he reached for the necklace around Myra's neck. The one she'd made with her own hands, adorned with blue beads. Liam had given it to her on the night they got engaged. Now he placed it back around her neck. The cold beads burned like fire in his palm. Then something caught his eye. A pistol had been tossed on the ground nearby. The grip was brass-plated. On it, a symbol, Black Wolf Riders. Yes, he'd heard of them. A gang of hired killers. Neither natives nor settlers. They only followed the scent of death and money. And now, Myra's blood was on their hands. Liam's gaze turned to steel. Without moving his lips, he whispered an oath. I'll find you. All of you. But first, he had to pay his respects to his people. That night, he carried each body one by one, built stone markers, said prayers. When he buried Mira last, he collapsed to his knees. Forgive me, he said, but I can't just mourn. They're still breathing. At first light, Liam rode off with Myra's necklace around his neck. Behind him was a shattered past. Ahead of him, a path that would be drawn in blood. As the sun rose through the misty morning, Liam was following horse tracks stretching west from the valley. Every notch, every broken branch was a map to him. He studied them carefully. The tracks were sloppy. The horses had been pushed fast, and the camp signs were left carelessly. It wasn't out of fear, it was arrogance. The Black Wolf Riders gang had no idea there was a man burning with revenge on their trail. Along the way, he found empty bullet casings on the ground, pieces of bitten bread, and a broken liquor bottle. All signs that they'd moved in a hurry. But to Liam, each trace was a clue. This wasn't just tracking. This was the beginning of a hunt. As the days passed, the trail led Liam beyond the wide plains and into rocky terrain. As night fell, he spotted a flickering firelight in the distance. He crouched silently and held his breath. Crawling closer, he almost blended into the darkness. His eyes had become those of a hunter. Inside a rocky hollow, 5 men sat around a fire. They were sprawled out, their weapons set aside, feet stretched out. Drunken laughter drifted up into the sky. One of them threw something to the ground. A beaded necklace. Liam's eyes widened. It wasn't Myra's, but it was the same style. Maybe from another victim. Or maybe a mockery, a cruel copy. One of the men stomped on the necklace with his foot and laughed. Do you remember the fear in that little girl's eyes? Ah, what a day. Another replied. He thought he was some kind of warrior, but couldn't even protect his own wife. Those words shattered the silence inside Liam. His heart pounded faster, but his hands stayed steady. He reached silently for his bow. As the arrow locked into place, his breath steadied. Then he released. The first man, hit in the neck, fell silent in a spray of blood. Before the others could even understand what was happening, they leapt to their feet, but it was too late. Liam was in the shadows. Like a ghost. Like a shadow. Another man felt the cold flash of a knife in his chest before he even realized he was dead. Even in chaos, Liam was focused. He wasn't a victim anymore, he was the executioner. He had buried his grief in the graves he dug with his own hands. Now he was death itself. The fourth man tried to fire in a panic, lit by the fire's glow, but Liam was already behind him. As the cold blade slit his throat, the only thing heard was a whisper. Mira. Only one man was left. Bigger than the others, more cautious. He groped the air in the darkness, staring blindly. Who's there? He yelled. No answer. Liam rose from behind a rock. The man trembled. He reached for his gun, but it was too late. The arrow hit him in the chest, and he stumbled with a stunned expression. As he collapsed, Liam leaned in and whispered, "This is just the beginning." Just then, a sound of hooves echoed in the distance. A horse. Approaching. A silhouette took shape in the twilight, like a shadow. A long coat on his back, his face hidden by the haze. The man dismounted, looked over the bodies on the ground, then turned to Liam. You the one tracking the men who burned that village? Liam narrowed his eyes and nodded. Who are you? My name's Jonas. I want payback too. The wind blew silently between them. Liam studied how the man carried his weapon, the mix of rage and darkness in his gaze. Trust was hard, but taking on a gang alone was madness. Jonas drew his gun from its holster. Let's go together. Let's make sure no one else's home burns. Liam didn't answer, but his eyes said yes. That night, they rode out together. And under the dark sky, Liam realized for the first time he wasn't alone. But this new alliance would bring with it not just weapons, but a truth darker than his past. Liam and Jonas were moving silently. The wind dragged dried leaves ahead of them, curling across the dusty horizon like ghosts of the past. They had spoken very little along the way. Each man carried his own burden, but both warriors had noticed the other's wounds. The silence was like a mutual understanding. They didn't need words to know. This path would end in blood. Jonas would sometimes move ahead and examine the tracks. He was a former tracker. He could read unmarked trails without saying a word. But there was something else in his eyes. Not just revenge. Guilt. Liam noticed, but he hadn't asked. Not yet. One night, under the dim glow of the campfire, Jonas finally spoke. Black Wolf Riders. I used to ride with them. Liam looked up. The anger inside him stirred, but he stayed quiet. Jonas continued. I was young. I wanted to live fast. Money came easy, so did blood. But one day we hit a village. We set it on fire. A little girl clung to her mother. And we dash, his voice trembled. His eyes welled up. I was never the same after that night. Liam looked into Jonas's eyes. What was the girl's name? Jonas shrugged. I never asked. Her name was Mira, Liam said in a low voice. Then he turned his eyes back to the fire. The rest of the night passed in silence, but a decision was forming in Liam's mind. Jonas had faced his past, and now, maybe he was here to cleanse it. But trust was something that grew slowly. The next morning, as the two men descended a mountain pass, an old mining settlement appeared at the edge of the valley. The wooden structures were in ruins, but something was alive. Smoke was rising, voices echoed. The gang had gathered there. A long-abandoned town turned into a fortress. Now a wolf's den. Jonas reached for the shadowed sheath at his side. This is it, he said. Silas is here. Their leader. The bastard behind all of it. Liam's gaze hardened. Silas. He had heard that name before Myra's death. They'd said he laughed, that he imitated the screams as he burned people alive. He was less than a monster. Even as Liam burned inside, he was ice on the outside. He whispered only one word. Tonight, they all die. The plan was simple. Night would fall. The shadows would be their cover. Liam would use his bow. Jonas would strike with his knife. One by one, without waking any of them. But plans were as fragile as life itself. As they crept closer with the sunset behind them, a sound broke the stillness. A child's voice. Crying, whispering. Liam stopped immediately. He moved through the grass. At the base of a rock hollow, there was a child with tied hands. His face was covered in dirt, eyes wide open. Please, I won't scream. Please, the boy whispered. Jonas came up beside him. God, they don't just kill. They're taking people. Liam untied the boy's hands. How many more? 3 girls. And a woman. They took them inside. This new information changed everything. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. Innocent lives were at stake. Jonas narrowed his eyes. Not tonight. We need to get them out first. Liam nodded. If we do, we have to be silent. If even one gets away, they all die. Jonas reached for his bow. We were born of silence, my friend. As they waited for nightfall, another shadow emerged from the darkness. A woman on horseback. She wore a pitch-black cloak. Her face was covered, but her silhouette was strong. She rode quietly and stopped in front of the 2 men. I'm after them too, she said in a firm voice. Liam narrowed his eyes. Who are you? The woman pulled back her hood slightly. A cold beauty appeared. My name is Elena. They took my brother. Liam, Jonas, and Elena stood at the edge of the abandoned mining town like 3 shadows. Each carried the weight of the past, but they were no longer alone. All 3 had different reasons, a lost love, a committed sin, and a kidnapped sibling. But the goal was the same, the Black Wolf Riders gang. And tonight, blood would be spilled. They gathered silently around an old water well at the entrance of the town. Jonas reviewed the old map. We can use the old mine entrance as a tunnel. It comes out behind the main hall. If we don't make noise, no one will notice. Elena spoke as she checked her bow. I'll go up. The old watchtower's still standing. I can see the whole area from there. If anything goes wrong, I'll shoot the first arrow. Liam nodded silently. He knew his enemies now. The more careful you were in the night, the fewer graves you had to dig come morning. Myra's necklace was pressed to his chest. It was like her heart was still there. Her pulse guided him through every blow, every breath. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and suffocating. Jonas led the way, Liam right behind him. At each step, water echoed between the stones, but they both measured their movements. Every man they'd encounter had to be like a shadow eliminated without being noticed. The tunnel opened just behind the old bunkhouses. Jonas slipped out slightly, then raised his hand. Clear, he whispered. Liam moved forward too. The sky had no stars. The darkness was their ally. Then a sound was heard. A soft murmur. Liam slid between the huts. A woman's voice was whispering a prayer from inside. Liam looked through a crack in the wooden wall. A woman with tied hands was sitting with 3 little girls. Her eyes were full of tears, but she stood strong. Jonas quietly broke the lock on the door. When they stepped inside, the woman flinched, but the children stared at them. Liam knelt down. We're here to get you out, he said. The woman bowed her head. Take them. I can stall them. But Liam shook his head. We're leaving together. The woman paused for a moment, then smiled faintly. You sound like Mira, she said softly. Liam's chest tightened. You knew her? The woman bowed her head. She was my cousin. Those words cut Liam like a knife. Anyone connected to her was a part of him now. He had to be even more careful. Just then, a whistle came from above. Elena's signal. Someone was approaching. They quickly moved behind the hut. A man from the gang was kneeling on the ground, relieving himself. He was muttering mockingly. Been thinking about Mira all night. What a sweet woman. Liam didn't listen any further. He raised his bow, pulled the arrow, released. The man collapsed without a sound. Jonas turned and looked. We need to hurry. If they find someone, they'll raise the alarm. The children were held by the hand and quietly led back through the tunnel. Elena was watching their progress from above. But then, suddenly, a second whistle. This one was the danger signal. 3 short, 1 long. Liam looked up. Elena was silhouetted in the tower, one hand on her bow, the other signaling from above. Horses were arriving at the center of town. At least 8 men. And among them, one stood out with a long coat, broad shoulders, and 2 massive guards at his side. Jonas whispered, Silas Boone. He's come early tonight. Liam's hands didn't shake, but fire lit up in his eyes. There's no turning back now, he said. Elena called down from above. He's got dozens of men. If we move now, it won't just be a fight, it'll be a slaughter. Liam locked his eyes on Silas. You couldn't call tonight anything else anyway. The town was beginning to wake up with a low hum that followed the silence. Silas Boone had dismounted his horse and was giving sharp orders to the men around him. Double the patrols. Be more alert at night. That shadow might show up again, he said with a mocking tone. His men laughed briefly. None of them found it truly funny. There was fear in them now. In recent days, all that was left of the men who had quietly disappeared were traces of blood. Liam was watching them from the corner of a shack. Jonas waited behind a sunken rock nearby, and Elena was in the watchtower, bow drawn and ready. One wrong move below, one careless step, and the whole plan would collapse. If we strike now, Jonas said, not just us, the hostages will die too. Liam nodded silently. But if we run, these men will never be found again. It was a gamble. If they won, the night would end in victory. If they lost, so would their story. But for Liam, the ending had already been written. The only difference was how many enemy bloodstains would fill the page. Elena shifted slightly in the tower. Her eyes were locked on Silas. One word slipped from her lips. Ready. Liam slung his bow across his back and drew 2 blades. Jonas quietly loaded his gun. The moment I fire, everyone will wake up. But my first bullet goes into Silas's knee. He won't be able to run. That was the plan. Take out the leader, throw the men into chaos. And within that chaos, hunt them one by one. When Elena's arrow sliced through the air, everything went still. Silas's right-hand man collapsed with an arrow through his chest. Boone turned to draw his weapon, but Jonas was already locked in. The bullet shattered his kneecap. The man screamed in pain and cursed before hitting the ground. Liam moved like a panther leaping from the shadows. The first man's throat was cut without a sound. The second found a blade in his chest as he reached for his gun. From above, Elena rained down arrows. The darkness had become their ally. But it didn't last long. A scream, then a gunshot. Then the entire town woke up. Lanterns were lit. Men shouted. Bullets flew in every direction. The ground shook. One by one, cover spots exploded. Jonas burst into a shack, grappling with 2 men. He snapped one's arm, slammed the butt of his gun into the other. They'll die tonight, he shouted. There was madness in his eyes. In that moment, Liam remembered why he was here. This wasn't just redemption, this was a willing walk into hell. Liam was closing in on Silas. The man lay bleeding on the ground, but still breathing. His eyes narrowed when he saw Liam. So you're the warrior. Myra's bastard, he hissed. Liam said nothing, but the blade in his hand spoke through the silence. It pierced Boone's shoulder. He screamed. Killing me won't change anything. No, Liam said. But you living won't fix anything either. Just as he was about to drive the blade into his heart, a bullet tore through the air. Liam staggered. A burning pain hit his left shoulder. Blood sprayed. Elena shouted from above. It's a trap. They're coming from behind. Jonas saw 3 new men emerging from behind a stable. Silas's backup. They'd been hiding in the town. They've got the kids again. Jonas shouted. They're taking them. Liam rose through the pain. His left shoulder was numb, but his eyes burned with fire. Go. Save them. Jonas nodded. Elena locked eyes with him for a moment. And you? Liam gritted his teeth. I'm staying. I'm not done with Silas. Jonas and Elena rushed after the children. Liam turned back to Silas. Boone was laughing. Revenge won't satisfy you. You know that, right? Liam knelt down. I'm not looking for satisfaction. Just justice. But at that moment, someone stepped out from behind Silas. Nearly invisible in the dark. Their face was covered, a long rifle in their hands. Liam realized the danger, but it was already too late. There was another gunman. And he wasn't just aiming at Boone. He was aiming at Liam too. The gunshot echoed through the night, but Liam dodged just in time. His shoulder wound began bleeding again, but he was alive. He rolled across the ground and took cover behind a rock. The man in the shadows aimed his rifle once more. There was that cold calculation in his eyes like a sniper's, but this was something else. This man didn't move like a soldier. He moved like a ghost from the past. Silas didn't miss the opportunity. He crawled toward the gun on the ground. Liam held his breath and notched one final arrow into his bow. Time slowed. On one side, the cold steel of the rifle. On the other, the last of his strength pulling back the string. The arrow ripped through the air. It struck the shadowy man in the right arm. The rifle fell. A muffled scream echoed. Liam turned to Silas. Just as the man raised his gun, Elena leapt from the watchtower. She dropped her bow mid-air and landed on top of Silas. They rolled on the ground. In one swift motion, she snapped his wrist. The gun flew from his hand. As Liam stood, her breath turned into a growl. Men like you are all the same. You burn. You take. You silence. Silas shouted. What do you want? Revenge? Justice? Elena leaned down, looking him in the eyes. What we want is for men like you to never speak again. Jonas yelled from the distance. We've got the kids. They're safe. Liam, clutching his injured arm, stepped beside Silas. His eyes were frozen, cold, sharp. You don't know Myra's last words. Because you didn't even give her time. But I'll give you an ending. A quiet one. Silas laughed. Even if you kill me, I win. Because you'll be just like me. Liam was silent for a moment, then shook his head. No. Because you're dying in fear. I'm not. And then, the blade slipped quietly into Silas's heart. It wasn't a scream, it was a fading. His eyes went blank. What left his body wasn't a final breath. It was emptiness. All that remained was the wind, and blood mingled with ash. As dawn broke, the children were safely led away from the valley. The women, under Elena's lead, vowed to build a new settlement. Jonas walked ahead of the children, and in his eyes was no longer the darkness of the past, but the light of a new purpose. Elena approached Liam as she mounted her horse. I don't regret coming with you, she said. But I can't stay. Liam nodded. This road begins alone, and ends the same. No, Elena replied. It starts alone, but its trail is always followed. And she left, quiet, resolute, free. Jonas placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. What will you do now? Liam looked toward the distant mountains. I'll go where the wind takes me. But wherever I go, Mira will be with me. Jonas smiled. The world still needs men like you. No, said Liam. The world's seen enough of men like me. Now it's time to rebuild. He mounted his horse. Myra's necklace was on his chest. It shimmered, as if, in that moment, it shone brighter than the morning sun. When he looked back, the town was quiet again. But it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of peace. Because that night, a man buried his past and faced the future without blinking. And the story didn't end there. But a warrior's duty had. By the way, we noticed something small. Most people who watch these stories aren't actually subscribed to the channel. Maybe we get caught up in the moment, or just forget to hit the button. But your support truly helps us keep creating stories like this. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel.